Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever felt like your mind and your body are two totally different things, yet somehow they're always talking to each other? This paper dives deep into that very question. It is a bit like figuring out how to hold two opposite ideas in your head at the same time. Like believing that your mind is this separate non-physical thing. But also knowing that what you think can totally make you do something, like go for a walk or grab a snack. How do we do that? The researchers here, Outa and Shari, propose that we use two different ways of thinking about how things cause other things. One way is to think about the causal origins, the underlying reasons or sources that give us certain abilities. For example, your mind is the origin of your ability to remember or think, and your body is the origin of feeling tired or hungry. The other way is to think about causal chains, the step-by-step sequences of events. Like remembering something, a mental event, can lead to feeling hungry, a bodily event, which then might lead to going to the kitchen and action. To figure this out, they did some clever experiments. In the first one, they asked 100 people to group 15 different things like seeing, feeling pain, reaching for something, and being tired. They had people sort these items into groups based on how similar they were, and then they asked people to rate how likely one event could cause another. And guess what happened? When people just sorted things, they tended to put mind things together, action things together, and body things together. It was like they were creating separate boxes for each. But when they talked about what caused what, things got messy. Their answers jumped all over the place, linking mind things to body things to action things, and so on. They were seeing connections everywhere, even across those separado boxes. This led them to conduct 5 more experiments to see how we actually use these two ways of thinking. They wanted to know if thinking about causal origins versus causal chains helps us in different situations. For example, in one experiment, they asked people to explain why something happened. They found that people much preferred explanations that followed a causal chain, like saying taking a walk made me feel tired, rather than explanations based on causal origins, like saying my body made me feel tired. It is like we like to tell a story of how one event led to another. But it's not always about chains. In other tasks, like trying to predict what might happen next or planning an actual intervention, they found different patterns. When trying to figure out what kind of abilities a new creature might have, or when planning a magical intervention to give a creature a new ability, people leaned more on causal origins. It sounds like they were thinking about the fundamental essence, or the root cause of that ability. And the really cool part is that they could even predict how strong someone's answer would be based on how related the items were in those two different mental spaces they created in experiment. 1. If a task was supposed to use causal chains, the stronger the chain connection was, the more likely people were to use it. And if a task was about causal origins, the stronger the origin connection, the more likely people were to rely on that. This really shows that these two ways of thinking are actively being used. So what does this all mean? It suggests that we don't just have one way of understanding cause and effect. We have these two parallel systems. One system focusing on causal origins helps us understand the underlying essence or source of abilities, like what makes a creature able to jump. It is more about the fundamental nature of things. The other system, focusing on causal chains, helps us understand the step-by-step flow of events, like how jumping might lead to feeling tired. It is about the sequence of actions and reactions. This helps us understand how we, and especially children, learn about the world. It seems we start by seeing the mind and body as distinct, but then we learn how they're connected through these chains of events, and by understanding the origins of our abilities. This research really bridges the gap between how we think about minds, bodies, and living things, showing it is all interconnected in our common sense understanding. Essentially, we use these two intuitive causal theories to navigate the social world. One helps us maintain the clear boundaries between mental, physical, and biological beings, while the other helps us understand how they all interact. It is a pretty sophisticated way our brains work to make sense of ourselves and others. Of course, no study is perfect. The researchers point out that they only looked at 15 specific events. Our lives and our understanding of ourselves are way more complex than that. Also, this study was done with adults in the US, and it is always interesting to see if these ideas hold up in different cultures or in younger children. These findings are super interesting because they give us a peek into how our minds organize complex information. It is not just about knowing facts, but about how we build our understanding of how the world works, especially when it comes to people. It highlights that to truly understand social cognition, we need to look beyond just the mind and consider how we think about bodies and biology too. So, what is my take on this? I think it's a really strong piece of research that provides a clear framework for how we understand causality. The idea of these two parallel systems, causal origins and causal chains, feels intuitively right. We often think about the why behind something in terms of its fundamental nature, picture. And we also tell stories about how things happen in sequence. The experimental design cleverly teased these apart, and the results were pretty convincing. One of the strengths is the rigorous methodology using tasks like free-sort and causal pairs, and then building on that in subsequent experiments. The way they predicted performance based on the distances in those initial spaces is particularly elegant. It really shows that the representations they measured are actively being used in different cognitive tasks. The main limitation, as the authors themselves note, is the limited set of stimuli. While these 15 items are good illustrations, our everyday concepts are much richer. Future research could definitely explore a wider range of mental states, actions, and bodily experiences, and importantly, examine these concepts across different cultures as the authors suggest. That would be fascinating to see if these two causal systems are universal. Overall, this paper offers a valuable insight into the fundamental building blocks of our social understanding. It suggests that our ability to understand others isn't just one thing, but a flexible combination of different causal reasoning strategies. It makes you think about how much we do without even realizing it, constantly piecing together the intricate connections between mind's actions. And bodies, what do you guys think about these two ways our brains think about cause and effect? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.